Let's give that for Sherry.
Hello? Okay. Hi. I'm too short to stand behind this thing, so I'm going to go over here. Hi, everybody. Who out of this room, who saw me speak last year or has read my book, so I know where I can start? Okay, wow. Okay, good. Because I don't want to repeat myself, but I will go over some of the things that I talked about last year, which was mostly about children and 3D interference, which is what my last book, Starseeds and the Great Awakening, was primarily about. But this year I'm going to go a little bit more into 3D influence, so we're going to get into psychological warfare. And I think right now the collective is really in need of guidance for healing and how to navigate through this journey. And that's my specialty. So I feel like I'm getting called back to my roots a little bit, and I want to focus on how to heal the soul through my methods that I've learned and integrated over the years. And that's what my new book is about. So my new book is called Courage to Change the Freedom Movement. And today I'm going to talk about things that are in that book that I haven't really talked about publicly yet, so it'll be fun for you guys. So I can promise you it might get a little bit weird, but we like weird here, right? Yeah. Huh? The new normal, right? Yeah. Yeah. So some of the things that I talked about last year, oh, that's really small. Some of the things I talked about last year was we talked about birth trauma. You know, one of the main 3D interference that we have, which I call the dark players, starts and intersects at the time of birth, during the birth portal. So there are a lot of things designed in our reality to interject the birth process. And I'm not going to talk about that today, but we got really in depth into that last year. We talked about the woke agenda, which you guys know how passionate I am about that. We got into quantum entanglement. We got into black box technology, which freaked everybody out in the conference last year. People covered their TVs. So I won't say anything this year to scare anybody. I mean, it's never my intention to put anyone in fear, but sometimes there are things that people need to be aware of because it's all about our consent. And if you know about it, then that's when you can choose not to give consent to something, and then we take our power back. We talked about mirror portals, nightmares and shadow beings, which a lot of our children are dealing with, and many adults. So we got into that last year. Voice of God technology. I'm not going to talk about that this year. Labeling starseeds and epigenetics and DNA. Those are the main topics. So this year, hybrids and transhumanism. So this year we're going to get into some 3D influence. So what am I talking about when I say 3D influence? We have 3D interference. So 3D interference is really more about the technology. So what are the technologies being utilized to keep us suppressed, to manipulate us, to program us, and how are we being controlled? Where 3D influence is more about the psychological aspect. How are they affecting us in a psychological way where we're affected by the mind? It's all about mind control. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's get into psychopaths, sociopaths, and mental illness, because I really like talking about this because we need to raise awareness about where it comes from and the differences. And I learned about that, and I should have said this first, but I think majority of you people, those of you here know, I'm not a researcher, don't care to research, don't have the attention span for research. So most of the information that I talk about comes through my sessions with adults and children. So I work with children, babies, all the way through to the elderly. And throughout those sessions over the last decade, I get the information and I share with you guys. So everything that I talk about is information that I learn in sessions, and that's what the books are about. And so psychopaths and sociopaths have come up quite a lot in my sessions. So I want to talk about the differences and why. So psychopaths are the most severe. And we talk about NPCs. I think somebody talked about NPCs in their talk, or maybe multiple people did. But the NPCs, where we get that terminology, because there's different layers of NPCs. One of which is when the soul dissociates because of a lot of the 3D interference and the psychological warfare. The soul dissociates because that is not what the pure soul does not want to integrate with that energy. The soul does not want to experience that trauma, so it will dissociate. And what happens is when you dissociate, that is when entities will come into your auric field through tears in your aura. They will come in and they will be in the driver's seat. I always talk about, and I did an interview with Leah Ray recently, we were talking about this, and the way I see it is these entities come through and they will start to control everything that you do in your life, and the soul gets so far behind that sometimes it's following behind, or an analogy of a car, it's sitting in the back seat. And so you'll see people start to act in a way that they wouldn't normally act. They talk a certain way. They start acting and doing certain things that they wouldn't normally do. And once that occurs, the psychopaths, what happens is the entity or entities will take over. And when an entity takes over, they take over the logical left brain, which I'm going to get into that more, and they will control the mind. And when you control the mind, the shadow side becomes more prominent, and the shadow side is where the ego lives. That's what I refer to the ego as the nemesis in my first book. And when the nemesis is in charge, you lose empathy. You don't care and you have no remorse for your actions. So when you are a murderer or a rapist or a child trafficker, or any of those people that we all say, oh my God, they're a psychopath, they're not in the driver's seat anymore. So essentially they become a non-player character because their soul has dissociated. They're not in there anymore. And in most cases, they never come back in. They can't come back in. When you have sociopaths, it's a little bit less severe, and the soul is fighting for that front seat. So the soul will sometimes come in, so they do feel remorse. And that's where the narcissistic tendencies come in. They do feel remorse for what they've done, but they have trouble caring. So they're just like, yeah, I know I did something wrong, but I don't think I really care that much. So there's a battle in the mind going on, and that's what's happening in our collective. That's what the 3D influence is about taking over our mind. It's psychological warfare so that we are not in control. And when we are not in control, the voice of God technology and all the other technologies they have that insert negative programming and negative affirmations, they seep into our subconscious, and we think that they are our thoughts. So when I work with children, they'll tell me that they hear voices in their head saying, you're not good enough, you're not smart, you'll never amount to anything, your parents don't love you. Where is that voice coming from? It's not from them. It's from technologies like black box technology, and that's what seeps into adults, because adults are a little bit more vulnerable and influential based on traumas that they experience throughout their life, and the soul dissociates a little bit more at a time. Schizophrenia and multiple personality disorder, bipolar, all of those are multidimensional disorders where the soul is tapping into different dimensions. And we see this a lot with children. So children are multidimensional and they're tapping into other realities. So there are other versions of themselves, other aspects of themselves in another timeline that's bleeding through because the veil is becoming very thin and they don't know which reality they're in that moment. So they're having flashes of themselves in another life, another version, or their name in another life, and they're calling their mom something else because that's their mom in another life, and they can't understand why their mom isn't responding to a different name. Now, if you take that throughout our history, those are the people that actually have spiritual gifts that have been placed in mental hospitals because the dark players, as you know, I refer to them as, they want those children so that they can use them for different programs. So there's a lot of misconceptions with psychopaths and sociopaths and all of that. Toxic shock syndrome. I want to talk about this because it's extremely important. I learned in my sessions in the last couple of years that people are having an extreme reaction to the 3D. So as you all know, we have our physical body, we have the light body. We all have the light body, it's all activated, it's illuminated, we all have one, and the chakras are the pathway between the two. So as we are all becoming more crystalline and our DNA is activating by our consciousness, so the higher in density of our consciousness we go, we are the ones that are able to unlock the dormant DNA. It's not junk DNA, it's just dormant DNA, and it cannot be unlocked by anybody else but ourselves. As we raise our consciousness, we are unlocking that. Now, children come in and it's already unlocked, and which is why they're so much more wise than previous generations. But what I have seen with a lot of children is toxic shock. So that's what a lot of people are experiencing. There are ascension symptoms So people are experiencing ascension symptoms. Everybody knows about ascension symptoms. You get headaches, you're lightheaded, blurred vision, you're forgetting your memory, things like that. Toxic shock is when people are having an adverse reaction to the 3D. The more higher in density you go and the more you tap into fifth dimension, we start experiencing symptoms that reveal to us that we are actually having a toxic effect, or toxic shock effect from the 3D. And children are experiencing this every single day, and I've noticed that adults are experiencing it as well. So I'm calling it toxic shock because that's what I was told in my sessions to call it. It's actually toxic shock, not toxic shock syndrome, but it makes me think of toxic shock syndrome, which most women in this room know what I'm talking about. But the common symptoms are fever, headache, fatigue, low blood pressure, rashes, acute reaction to bug bites. I don't know how many of you are having a harsher reaction to venom, but that's because our bodies are not equipped to handle it anymore. We can't integrate with that energy. Vomiting, diarrhea, muscle pain, sensitivity to food. Children can't eat our food anymore. They're having acute and adverse reactions to the food. They're having more allergies because their bodies are rejecting the food that we're eating. Anything 3D, the body is rejecting because the body is getting mixed signals. Well, I'm raising in consciousness. I'm bringing in more light. My DNA is activating, yet I'm still in a 3D environment, and there is a disconnect. That's where autoimmune disorders come in because the light body is fighting with the physical body. They can't figure out each other, and that's happening with a lot of people. People are having more sensitivity to light, sensitivity to sound, sensitivity to seizures are what I like to call in technological terms, it's a reboot. So your system crashes because you're bringing in more light codes, and the body can't process the light codes. The body crashes, and you start having a seizure. I have probably 24 clients that are children 12 and less that have consistent seizures. I believe one of them is in this room. And that's because their body cannot hold the light that the child is bringing through. The soul is bringing in so much more light that the body literally says, I don't know what to do with this light. I can't integrate it. And so I just short circuit. I just break down, and they have a seizure. The good thing about the seizure, though, is that each time they're having a seizure, they're actually reprogramming the body for the next time and the next time, and it's an integration process. I was told in a session years ago, anxiety is a 3D virus, and I think that a lot of the presenters have touched upon this, but we are equipped with an autonomic nervous system. That autonomic nervous system has the parasympathetic mode and the sympathetic mode, and most of humanity is programmed to remain within the sympathetic mode, the fight or flight, the survival mode. And our body cannot heal during that period, and this is by design by the powers that were or the dark players. So I used the analogy in my book recently of a cheetah being chased by a gazelle. So think about a gazelle is running for its life from this cheetah. Maybe the cheetah has clawed a little bit and he's wounded, but he's running for his life. The body is shunting all of the blood to the heart, to the brain, to the lungs, and to the muscles in order to keep this animal running away to survive. So the animal's not going to stop and say, hold on a second to the cheetah, let me lick my wounds, I got to heal myself so that we need a timeout. This is not how it works. And so the body can't heal while the cheetah is chasing the gazelle. And that is how humanity is operating every single day, our entire life. The body is constantly perceiving that we are being chased by something, and we are in fight or flight. The adrenals are overactive. And our body does not have a chance to heal because the body cannot heal until it perceives that it's safe. So let's say that gazelle gets away, then there's no more threat. So he goes in behind the trees and he starts licking his wounds, and the body says, okay, now it's time to heal. But the problem is that none of us are giving our bodies that signal because we're constantly on the go, we're constantly worried. And I believe that anxiety is a virus of 3D, metaphorically speaking, to keep humanity in that mode of fight or flight. And our body, we're looking at anxiety in the wrong way. And I'm so glad that Laura touched upon this because I have been told this for children. I think the statistic, again, I'm not a researcher, but it's over 30% of the population suffers from some level of anxiety, and it's higher with children. So why is that? Why is everybody experiencing so much anxiety? Our body is trying to say, hello, I'm telling you that something is not right. and it's trying to get our attention. So the anxiety is actually a good thing because it's our body's way of saying, you guys are being fooled. You guys are being chased by something. You guys are being programmed. Whatever the data that is being transmitted through the subconscious, our body is being told, you can't relax. Something is not right, which is why 95% of the children that I work with have some sort of anxiety that they're working through because they're not comfortable here. Something isn't right. Something doesn't feel right. So their body is trying to tell them something is not right. And they can't understand why or what it is. So they have stomach aches. They have high blood pressure. They have headaches. They have all of these symptoms because the body is trying to say, alert, 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 pay attention. Something in this reality is not right. And so anxiety really is an inserted frequency. It's a frequency band that most of us have been on at some point in our life. And our bodies are not healing as a result of that. And the anxiety is our body's way of saying something is not right. But I feel like most of us are starting to become more in tune with our bodies, and we're discovering that. Selling your soul. This is another one that I'm getting a lot in my sessions, especially with children. Selling your soul is a really important topic right now that is being sold to our youth as something cool. And a couple of you guys have heard me talk about this, and this is just some silly examples of how how people start when they go into our pop culture, and then what's happening to them and how they're being changed. And the problem with that is that our children are buying into that, and they're putting the symbols up. They're listening to the music, and they think that it's cool to sell their soul. And first of all, you can't sell your soul. It's not even, that doesn't even exist. No one can buy a soul because nobody's soul is for sale. But it's the trickery in the 3D. It's the illusionary aspect of it where they try to convince you to give your power away. And then inadvertently, you are selling your soul by buying the music, by wearing the shirts, by singing the lyrics, by putting up the signs and symbols that you don't realize. And inadvertently, you are consenting to that. And they're taking over our children every single day like hostages. And it's getting more blatant, as you can see, and the portals that they have in the concerts. And our children want us to take them to these concerts, and we have to say, no, we can't support this. And this is why. Because they're selling the idea that we can give our soul, we can give our power away. And this is a big issue that I'm seeing in the collective right now. Another one is obesity. Why do they want people so obese? Why? What's the point of that? Who can tell me? I mean, the more obese you are, Karma? Oh, big pharma, yes. Yeah. I'm like, karma, yeah, that would work too. Because the bigger we are, the easier we are to be able to be controlled, because when we are overweight, our body is overworking to process all of that additional weight. And we cannot rest. We have more dis-ease, and we're more easily susceptible to programming. And we are walking around over the years, and we're much larger, and we are more plugged into the matrix when we're overweight because we are not paying attention to anything else. We are more sedentary today than we have ever been before because of our lifestyle that they have introduced in our life, where we don't move, we're not mobile at all, so we're getting bigger and bigger and bigger and more unhealthy. And the more unhealthy you are, the more susceptible you are to programming, and the more easily you are to be manipulated. And that's bottom line. That's what they're trying to do to all of us. If you look at this graph that I saw, which I actually think it's much bigger than this, but you can see over time how our body types have changed. And the problem is that they are, through the woke agenda, they're trying to make people feel like this is normal. Like our children are being taught that if you don't think that this is beauty, the bigger you are, then you are fat phobic. And there are other terminology that they're using. But again, it's another manipulation tactic that the bigger we are, the easier that they can control us. This is just a funny one that I put in here of the comparison of the 70s to how they depict us today. And I think most countries around the world look at Americans like that, because we are probably one of the most obese in the globe. I'm pretty sure. Okay, teeth. I want to talk about teeth. I know this sounds like a really silly thing to put in here, but you wouldn't believe the amount of information that I've received on teeth in the last 3 years that I really feel like it's important to talk about teeth. And the reason for that is our teeth hold so much data and so much information that we don't realize they're Akashic record holders. So they keep the information stored for lifetimes. And so the dark players are going to do whatever they can to give us misguidance on how to care for our teeth. So, in Norse culture, they used to offer their teeth for their children to the gods, to Odin, but to other gods as well, for good luck, for protection. Vikings used to wear necklaces of teeth around their neck. Why is that? Why do they care so much about teeth? Why was the tooth fairy even invented? Why is it that in France they have a mouse that collects the teeth for good luck? Why is it that in South America they have a rat that they regard as, rats continuously grow teeth? So they think that that's going to bring good luck. Why is that? Why do they care so much about the teeth? There are a lot of cultures that actually believe that in witchcraft you can take the teeth and you can cast spells on people. So they hide the teeth of their children and bury them, or they put them in satchels and hide them because they want their child to have a good life and they don't want them to be cursed. So there has to be a reason why the teeth are so important. And that is because the teeth hold valuable DNA and valuable data, energetic data. So our etheric blueprint, our light body, holds our spiritual blueprint, holds information. But our teeth is a physical manifestation of those blueprints. So there are people in our ancestry that could hold a tooth and could access information like a crystal ball. And they know that. And so they want us to not have any positive relationship with our teeth, because to them, they teach us it's just teeth. And you'll get 2 sets, and you brush your teeth, you floss, you put fluoride on it, and that's it. They're not a big deal. But in reality, they hold valuable information that if we were to keep them, which I'm saying all this, but I don't keep my children's teeth because there are other ways to hold the information. But our ancestors really did value the teeth because they store so much positive information, and they are record keepers. Wisdom teeth are multi-lifetime, where the teeth that we have in our mouth is this lifetime. That's the only difference. So the wisdom teeth hold information from every lifetime you've ever had, human or not, and they want to take them out. Why do they want to take them out? Because they know that that's our connection. It's a physical connection to our lineage, our soul's lineage. And if they remove that, then they remove the connection. So previously, I don't know if I have a slide there, elephant tusks are another valuable tool for holding Akashic records of the planet. That's why they're so valuable, because the people who know, they want to collect the tusks so that one day they know that it's going to hold information that they can access on of our past. So I believe that's why they're so valuable and they're so expensive, because they hold information. The bad news for them is the only people that can unlock the information are the indigenous people, and that's why I believe that a lot of the indigenous care for the elephants so much, because they know they're the only ones that can read that information. And it might not be right now. It might be 100 years from now, but those tusks store a tremendous amount of information. So over time, though, our mouths have gotten smaller, because our heads have gotten smaller. We're smaller frame on purpose for a lot of reasons. Genetic modification, all sorts of things. Evolution, which I don't buy into, but I'll just throw that in there for shits and giggles. But our mouths have gotten smaller. So there are people that can't fit their wisdom teeth in their mouth. So there is valid reason to remove them, but not everybody has to remove them. And I want to share this slide with you, because this is a funny tidbit of information. So you see the common theme in all the teeth that I'm sharing up there? Can you guys see it from your vantage point? I have been told in sessions, I tend to attract a lot of Lyrans. Now, all of us have some sort of Lyran lineage, every single one of us here. But some of us are more connected to the Lyrans than others. And 90% plus of the clients that I've worked with over the years that are Lyran have teeth like this. So that doesn't mean that every person here that has teeth like that is Lyran, and it doesn't mean that anybody here that doesn't have teeth like that are not Lyran, but a majority are. So you can pay attention to that now. And the reason for that is because they're connected to the Lyran felines, and the Lyran felines have a much more, their face comes down like this, and it's catering to that genetic DNA. It's remembering, but through cellular memory it's trying to accommodate that mouth, and it can't, so the teeth start to overlap. Fun fact. Does anybody here have teeth like that? Couple people? Yeah, you're Lyran. And I know the people that have it, and I know they're Lyran too. At least they have a dominant Lyran connection. Okay, hair has come up a lot. This is another one that is extremely important, and it's another 3D influence tactic for us to become disconnected to the spiritual significance of hair. It's very significant. Our hair, just like our teeth, holds genetic information, and it holds memories, and it holds experiences and energy in your hair. The longer your hair, the more information and wisdom you can hold within you. So all the men, don't freak out, because I'm going to circle back to that in a minute. But I want to talk about why hair came up. So I had a session with a middle-aged woman, years ago. And the reason she wanted to have a session with me is because she had a trauma from childhood that she couldn't work through. She couldn't understand it, and she said, you're the only one that I feel can help me. And her issue was, when she was a child, a young girl, when she was forced to cut her hair, she would cry extensively. And her mom would get so mad at her because she was like, why are you crying? And she said, it hurts, Mommy, it hurts. And she couldn't understand why it was hurting. And her mom got really mad and couldn't understand why she was saying that. And she said, you're lying. It doesn't hurt. There are no nerves on your hair. You can't see. It doesn't hurt. And she was being like, no, Mommy, no, don't cut it. And it was a deep-rooted trauma that she had. In her whole life, she never got over it. Eventually, she consented, as most children do when they're being told what to do by their parents. Eventually, they stop fighting and they listen. But she grew up never cutting her hair as an adult and always had it in a braid. And she said, I don't know what my attachment is to my hair, and I don't understand why I would cry. So in that session, I connected with that child version of her and a Native American version of her from another lifetime. And she told me that it is part of their soul. And they didn't cut in that lifetime. You don't cut your hair unless there's a trauma or a death in the family or something that occurs that signifies the end of something. So the longer your hair, the more wisdom that you hold. So she was having a cellular memory, and she was interpreting the pain, physical pain, as emotional pain from another lifetime. I had like 7 more clients in the next year that had similar issues with their hair and couldn't understand what the significance was. So our hair holds a lot of information, and it absorbs a lot of information from the sun rays. So the rays of the sun come down, and our hair is our receptors. So it pulls in information, and we store it, and it brings in light codes through our hair, goes through our scalp, and it goes right into our pineal and into our brain. I was just showing in here the cutting of hair was used as a brutal method to suppress Native Americans back in the day, and they would cut their hair to shame them because they knew how important hair was to them. So for men in there, so this is why I believe that over time, over our history, we have such an odd relationship with hair. And I believe the dark players program us to style our hair, put a lot of products, dye it, to cut it short, to do all these things, and they use the celebrities to roll things out, so we copy it. The blue hair, the green hair, all of these things, because they're constantly trying to disconnect that pathway. But what I discovered, because my first question was, well, what about men? Why men's hair is short? Does that mean that they're not wise? Obviously, that was rhetorical. But what I was told is that our body will always compensate. Our bodies are incredible. And I think everyone in here appreciates the wisdom within our body, and our body will always compensate. So for women and men who have short hair, your body will find another way to bring in that energy. And it's generally through, and that's why a lot of men will have facial hair. It'll come through your nails, it comes through your skin. So your body will always find another way. But the hair is really significant. And they were telling me about the colors and the textures. So straight, very straight hair signifies strength, endurance, stubbornness, which is why my hair is so straight, because I'm just so stubborn. You're like, I am not moving. You are not going to tell me what to do. I do not want to be controlled. People with straight hair are generally like that. People with wavy hair tend to be a little bit more relaxed, and they're flexible. They're a little bit more flexible in their journey, and they're going through transitionary phases. They're okay with change. They're more fluid. I wish I could be more fluid, but I'm not, and that's why my hair is super straight. People that have really curly, like I'm talking spiral tight curls, they're holding in so much information and so much wisdom that their hair curls up super tight to be able to hold all of that information in. And regardless of how you try to straighten it, it curls right back up, because your soul is choosing that method to hold that information. So it's really cool. Red hair is fiery souls. They hold ancient wisdom, and they're very rare because they're holding the most ancient, galactic, and indigenous information. And they're very fiery because they're proud of that heritage and they want to hold on to it. So there can be a little bit more mysterious. Black hair represents wisdom, in a different way. It's more wisdom of your soul's journey and what you've been through, and it holds and represents through the color of your hair. So everybody's hair is the way that it is for a reason. People who have blonde hair are they're more comfortable with change, and they are more vibrant, and they are more flexible. They're able to explore. They're in an exploration phase and transition. That's why they pulled out in whatever year it was, dumb blondes, that thing that they came out, because they can be a little bit more, they're more in their exploration phase. So they try to monopolize that by saying that they are not smart. Gray hair or white hair represents purity and wisdom of the elders, and that's why our hair changes to white, and it represents purity. Telomeres and other things have a lot to do with that as well, but those are kind of the basic rundown of the different hairstyles. Okay, I had a session with a 12-year-old boy, and the mom was really upset because her son played video games 24/7, and she said, this is getting out of control. He will not leave his room. All he does is play VR, and I'm worried about him being programmed. Is this the program? Does he have an entity attachment? And I said, well, I don't know. Let's find out. So I had a session with him, and I got an answer that I was blown away by, and I didn't believe it at first, but I can't tell you how many times I've been told this again, and it's actually quite interesting. So our bodies relax during alpha stage the most. So there's beta, alpha, theta, and delta, right? Yeah. And so majority of our programming by the dark players happens during beta and alpha. So just a little bit of relaxation, they can hook us in through general hypnosis. And that's through the TV, generally. That's when they do the subliminal messaging, comes from the TV and the music and things like that, because we're in that beta level of relaxation and into alpha. And so that's where they can hook us in, because our subconscious is now connected, but our conscious mind is tuning out a little bit. So video games, this boy told me that he was so dissociated from this life. He was from Alpha Centauri. He said, I don't want to be here. I hate this planet. I volunteered to come here, and I don't want to be here. So when I am plugged into the video games, he goes back home. And I said, well, how does that work? And he said, well, the more relaxed I am, and I'm vegged out, and I'm playing. I mean, obviously, you have to play the game. Your mind is occupied. But while the mind is occupied, he astral projects himself and goes home. And he said, it helps me buy time. And it keeps me occupied so I don't have to be in this 3D reality. And I was like, well, that's pretty cool. That makes a lot of sense. And then I started thinking about animals, and like cats and dogs, and they sleep all day. And I knew this already from working with animals my whole life. And animals told me the same thing many years ago. They sleep a lot so that they don't have to be here all the time, and they will follow their human counterpart around, which I'm going to get into animals later. So children are trying to find something similar to pass the time, because they really are struggling here with the toxic 3D effect, and they're not integrating into this reality because they're not supposed to integrate into this reality, because they're here to change the reality, and they're distorting the frequencies. They are not buying into the paradigms. They are saying no. They are not listening, and they are trying their best to get our attention. And when we don't listen to them, they get frustrated and they say, I'm going to check out then because you're not listening to me. And video games happens to be one of the ways that they are able to dissociate in a safe way. Now, I'm not saying everyone should go home and let their children play video games all day, but that was an interesting explanation because there's always multiple truths to everything. And so perhaps your child or children are just somewhere else, and they just need a safe way to do that. Now, it's not just video games. It could be watching television, movies, listening to music. You can tell when your children are there or not, and it's likely that they are not there. So that was an interesting find that I had this past year. Okay. In many, many sessions, I have been told, they had started calling the matrix the box, and I didn't really understand that in the beginning. I mean, it's obvious if you think logically, oh, a box, okay, that makes sense, we're confined within it. But I have been shown that the star seeds are coming in like comets of light. That's what I've always been shown. They're coming in as comets of light. So when you come into the 3D, and they're showing me that the 3D is designed much like, if you think about the analogy of a cardboard box, it's completely taped up, and it's a controlled environment. That's what they're showing me that the matrix is. So when every time any of us are born, we have a specific soul frequency. And when we come into the box, we create holes within the box. But on top of that, the dark players know every single moment of every day when someone is born, they know who came in, where they came from, what their job is, and their soul's purpose. Many of us can't recall, we don't know, but they know. And so that's how a lot of the children that I work with and adults are targeted their whole life. Because they're like, how do they know who I am? And they do know who you are because your soul has a specific frequency that's different from anyone else. And when you come through the box, you go through their frequency, and then they can pick up on it, and they have technology to do that. But over the years and through our awakening process, we have had volunteers for really thousands and thousands of years, but let's just keep it connected to the last few generations. Like Dolores talked about the 3 waves of volunteers. How many of you guys have read that book? It's one of my favorite books. So if you think about them, the struggle with the first wave of volunteers, which was in the mid-1900s, there weren't enough of them. So the holes that they were making in the box wasn't enough to affect the collective consciousness. So they were essentially drowning. They were fish out of water. No one was listening to them. Many of them committed suicide, and many of them became introverted and wouldn't leave their home. So it wasn't really making enough of an impact on the collective box here because humanity wasn't ready for it. There were too many parameters set. But because we've had so many children coming into this planet since the year 2000, really, their signature that I talked about is so strong that they are making our box look like this, and the 3D is breaking down. And this is the best visual I could create through AI to show you how I see it in my mind. It's not quite that clean, but the idea is that our frequencies and the children's frequencies collectively are working together, and as they work together, they get stronger. And the holes are actually in different sizes. Some are small, some are bigger. And that's how the 3D starts to break down, and that's why the veil is thinning. That's why people are starting to have spontaneous awakenings. That's why we are all here today, because our light is finally illuminating, and it's breaking down that 3D box. The firmament, everybody talks about the firmament. So I'm going to tell you, and I don't want to debate about this, but I'll just tell you what I've received in my sessions, and I've compiled it into one thing. The firmament, and this visual is supposed to represent, like, imagine this little globe, the 3D box is within it, and then all the other dimensions is outside of that. So that's what that is trying to show. So Tyler gave me this tool. So this around here represents a frequency. So I know the firmament is more shown as a kind of on the top half with a flat earth. But the idea of the firmament is simply that it's a frequency. It's a frequency to hold us within that box of that parameter, within those frequencies, and our dis-ease and our anxiety that I talked about, that virus we keep that box, the integrity of that box going. Because the loosh that we give off from our fear, our anxiety, our dis-ease, is what keeps this going. So as we are waking up to our anxiety and saying, perhaps my anxiety is trying to tell me something, or perhaps my child is actually trying to wake me up, or perhaps my child is saying no for a reason, that frequency band is starting to break down. And the problem with change is, and that's why I called this talk Courage to Change, because you have to have the courage to change first. And the problem with our programming through our generations is we've become so complacent and we inadvertently consent. And when you inadvertently consent, that frequency stays intact. And we are trapped, essentially trapped within it through illusionary. And we are not, the integrity of that is breaking down. And the problem with it is many people are uncomfortable with that. Because why do people stay in abusive relationships, as one example? Because they're afraid to see potentially what's outside of that home with somebody else that might abuse them more. You know, sometimes we get so comfortable that the idea of change is actually scarier than the trauma you're going through in that given moment. So we decide, we consciously make the choice to stay. So I believe that those flat earthers, yes, it is a psyop, yes, it was introduced by people, but why do people believe it though? They believe it because that's what makes them feel comfortable. They like the idea of being complacent within a box. And the 3D flat earth theory, the flat earth theory in this two-dimensional reality, it makes sense to them because that's their limited consciousness, of their density of consciousness is able to perceive, and it accepts that because that's how they feel safe. But the higher in density that you go, you realize not only is it spherical, but as you go through beyond fifth dimension, it's actually colloidal. And we have the ability to manifest and create anything we want, and our light bodies are more active. So depending on your density of consciousness, you will perceive and accept a flat earth, a spherical earth, and a colloidal earth. It's all based on perception, and nobody is necessarily right or wrong because it's based on interpretation. So I believe that this is where many of us in this room who connect more multidimensionally perceive our reality, because I don't even perceive it as a spherical anymore. I perceive it as colloidal, like it's just ever-changing. It's continuously fluctuating. It's oscillating every single moment. When everyone in this room goes through their frequencies of emotions, both good and bad, it changes and it affects the entire oscillation process. So we're constantly affecting the oscillation and the density and the frequency every single moment of every single day. And that is what fifth dimension and beyond is about. But they want our limited perception to remain inside that box, to be comfortable with that box, and then fight each other and say, no, I'm right, because I want to stay in this box, when other people are looking at it like, but don't you see the limited perception that creates? But people don't want to see that because they're connected to their level of density, and that's all that they perceive. So I don't believe in any one truth. I believe that everybody's truth is correct. There's many sides to every story, and it's a really humbling experience when you recognize that everybody's truth is valid to some degree. It might be harder for us to accept somebody else's truth, and you really are adamant that your truth is the truth, the ultimate truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God. But in reality, as we tap more into our multidimensional aspects of ourselves, we recognize that actually their truth might be right as well. And that's how we know that we're growing and we're advancing. So one of the biggest questions that I get to is, why are so many people volunteering to incarnate as a human being? What is so special about being human, and why is this causing such a positive effect? I'm talking about the starseeds. Why incarnate as a human being? What's the point? What can we do? How does it affect us in a positive way? So, and I ask this valid question in many sessions because I have the opportunity to converse with many people's guides and many people's higher selves, and I ask the same question a lot because I want to see the different perspectives. And I want to know why we chose to come in as a human, because we have guides. Everybody has guides. Everyone has angels that guide and protect us and try to, create synchronicities so that we are guided down certain pathways so we don't forget. So why not just do that? Why don't we have more of them? Why do we have more of us? And they told me that it's so much more powerful to anchor our frequency as a soul into the human body, because then we have a connection. We can anchor to the earth, but we also remain connected to our soul, and we can do so much more. So when we anchor our light into the body, we are able to do grid work. I would say probably most people in this room, if not everybody, I never like to say anything 100%, but majority of the people in this room are doing grid work. Because what happens is every single one of us has a light body. We all have a light body right now. We don't have to achieve it. It's already there. Many people can see it. It's called an auric field. How big your light body is depends on your density of consciousness. Some people are angry and have riddled with disease. Their auric body might be, a foot out. That's when dogs and animals are afraid of you, because they can sense the density is disconcerting to them. But your auric field could extend. I've seen children's auric field 15 feet out. It's like rivaling, it's like similar as horses. So while your body is vibrating that frequency of that energy, it is regridding the planet. It's re-terraforming, because we are terraformed right now for the box. So we're re-terraforming for a different frequency. So we re-terraform by regridding, by our body frequencies from different galactic origins are regridding and repopularizing the frequency to be more conducive to a higher frequency or higher density, fifth dimension. We are able to open portals with our body, with the connection of our soul. So we can do that in our human body. We are opening portals. Every single day, we don't even realize it. We're creating vortexes of energy. Ancestral healing, I'm not going to talk too much about that now because I want to get into it in a little bit, but we are choosing to volunteer to heal thousands of people in our generational, our ancestral lineage and our soul lineage. There's two different things. The soul lineage is different than the ancestral lineage, and I'm going to talk about that. But in order to do that, you have to incarnate as a human. You transmute the healing and the traumas, and it helps thousands of others. And you need to be in a body to be able to do that. By bringing in higher densities of light, that's how we heal the body. That's how these light codes that are coming in from our soul actually is healing our bodies, and we need to be in a body to do that. And if I heal, I can positively affect everybody that I meet and come in contact with physically, and also virtually, because we're all connected in the quantum. So I could positively help somebody in thousands of miles away from me simply by resonating in my vibration without even being in your presence. And that's what children do. This is a given. By us talking to each other and sharing knowledge, we can positively affect, this is the psyche part. We can insert positive suggestions and positive affirmations to combat the negative affirmations being given out and broadcasted through satellite, through the voice of God technology, through the black box technology and all of those other technologies. We combat that and we distort that and we disrupt it. We hold the space. So a lot of children, like I think Laura said this, or like I call them little Tesla towers. These children are walking around and they are disrupting the frequencies that are being given off to cause disease within our body. They are distorting it, and the technology is breaking down. So they have to be in a body to do that, though. And so that's helpful. Breaking down the 3D box is a given. And enhancing your astral abilities. When you're in a body, you can enhance those astral abilities and have more of an effect because your body is anchored here, but you're doing work somewhere else, and you're filling in the gaps everywhere in between. There are a lot of interpretations of the void. So I'm going to talk about the one that I have been told about, again, through my sessions with children. There are a lot of children that during sleep time, they travel to the void. The void I'm talking about, is a space that is in between dimensions. So last year I had a lovely elderly lady call me out on stage because she didn't know if she was in the wheel of samsara or not. But a lot of people become trapped. The way the dark players trap souls, which they have been doing for hundreds of years, thousands of years, when somebody dies in a traumatic way, or they promote a traumatic death through dementia, which is another inserted 3D virus, when they die of trauma, they're more susceptible to going to a false light. The false light does exist. So our soul knows where to go, but there is a false light created through technology that will actually pull your soul like a magnet, and you'll be attracted to go into that false light, And what happens is you are taken back into the void, which is interdimensional space. It's not a place, it's a frequency in between dimensions where a lot of souls are trapped. And the crazy thing is a lot of souls that are trapped could be in this room, and you are here in this life to get your soul out of that life, out of that void, is trapped there. So you incarnated in this life to save yourself. And I've seen that a lot, and a lot of children are going there in the astral, and they are ushering those souls out of that void. But this void has been there for many thousands of years. It doesn't have a physical space. It's just a frequency. There are many souls trapped within that 3D. Many souls that are trapped within the 3D are there. It's dark, it's dense. Many people say that this is the underworld. Many people call it hell. It's void of time, so they could be there infinite. They could be there for eternity. In there, that's how they feel, if they put it into our construct of time. There are a lot of shadow beings that reside there, and they are kind of the guardians over them, kind of the gatekeepers. And what happens is the oversoul loses connection with that fractal, because our consciousness has the ability to fractal out into many lifetimes. We're all experiencing infinite amount of lives in Earth and other places in many different forms. And the oversoul connects with all of those versions of us. But if that fractal goes into the void, the oversoul loses connection with that. And that's why a lot of people incarnate again to help bring that part of them back, because they have to come in and be a human to do that. There are a lot of collective groups that I work with that go into the void, and they are rescuing people every single day. Now, I don't want to scare anybody, because the void is already broken down. It really doesn't exist anymore. Nobody new is going into it, is what I mean to say. So at this point, it's just souls being rescued from that void, but there's no more souls trapped in it. I don't want anybody to misinterpret that. It's breaking down. Okay, let's talk spiritual. So getting out of the loop. A lot of our 3D is designed to keep us in loops, into patterns. So I talked about this in all 3 of my books, but I brought it back up again because I think that a lot of us that are stuck, and a lot of the adults that I work with, and children actually, we don't realize and recognize that a lot of our reality is designed in which to keep us in loops, in patterns. So there are collective loops, like addiction is a big one. And it could be opioid addiction, alcohol addiction, sexual addiction, all sorts of things. Those are all loops. Those are collective loops that are created by the dark players to keep us in groups in these loops, in these patterns that go around every single day, and it's a pattern, and it's repetitive program to keep us trapped. But then there are also individual loops, and majority of the population is in some sort of a loop, and you don't realize it. So you become trapped in these loops, in these cycles of anger, of resentment, of judgment. You can't forgive. There's some reason majority of people are trapped in the loop, and it's blocking them from healing. So what I want to do is teach people how to recognize that you're in the loop, what the triggers are, and how to get out of them. So here are some of the signs. So if anyone in this room, if you feel like you consistently attract friends or partners that don't value you, you have anxiety about change, even if you know it would be beneficial. You are consistently taken advantage of throughout your life. You consistently find yourself in the middle of drama. And you consistently feel lost and hopeless. Raise your hand if any of those relate to anybody. Yeah, so those are loops. Those are loops that are preventing people from healing. And the problem with loops is they become comfortable. And again, we're creatures of habit. It's a primal habit of ours as human beings to stay in these loops because it's comfortable. And it prevents us from healing. And I want to show you the ways that you can get out of it, the easiest ways to break out of these loops. Well, number one is triggers. What are your triggers? What do you think, what is the loop that you're in that you can identify? Is it anger? Is it the inability to forgive? Is it addiction to something? Is it abusive relationships? What's your loop that you can identify? And then write down all the triggers. What's keeping you in there? What's comfortable there for you? What's scaring you from coming out of it? So that's the first step. But second is grounding. We need to reconnect our soul and our body and ground us to this planet, because a lot of us are trying to escape in many ways. That's why we get trapped in these loops. So there are many ways to ground, but grounding with nature and grounding with the right brain are two separate things, and we got to do both. I'm going to get into the right brain later, but we want to ground to nature. You guys all know how to ground. I don't need to explain different ways of grounding. You guys all have your ways. I've seen you guys out there connecting to the earth. I've seen people hugging trees. I see people with their crystals. I see people with their salts and all of these things. That's a way to ground, but you also need to ground with the right brain. That is really important, and that's something we're not taught in school, and I'm going to talk about that later, so I'm not skipping over it. Progressive breathing, I talk about this in my book. This is the number one, my favorite, and I think it's free and it's the easiest way to bring your body from sympathetic mode, which is what keeps you in the loop, and brings you right into parasympathetic mode, and it takes 2 minutes or less. It doesn't cost a penny, and it will break you out of a cycle immediately, because then you start to think from a place of clarity and intuition, and not from fear and anxiety and the what ifs, because our left brain really messes with us. So progressive breathing is about taking a deep breath in and saying, any and all energy that's not serving my highest good at this time, or any other statement you want to make, you bring it to the surface, you hold your breath for longer than it took to breathe in. Some people call this the 3-5-7 method, 4-6-8. The idea is you take a deep breath, you have an intention, you bring that energy to the surface. What I don't want to hold anymore, that's all the limited beliefs, all the trapped emotions, all the stress, all the anxiety I'm holding in my body, all that junk that's not even mine, because most of us are holding on as empaths to energy of other people. It's not even my anger. You know, I'm around my daughter who's really angry, and then I'm angry. And I'm like, why am I angry? I wasn't angry. Because we are taking everyone else's energy and their emotions, because we're empathic and we want to help them. And so we have a lot of trapped emotions that aren't even ours. So how do we get rid of it mindfully and intentionally every single day? By doing this. I can almost guarantee you, if everyone in this room did this exercise twice a day for 2 weeks, you'll feel like a new human being. So you breathe in, you say, any and all energy that's no longer serving my highest good, I choose to release it now. And you hold your breath. And you want to take a nice belly breath, like make that belly big, like you're pretending to be pregnant, like kids used to, used to do when you were a kid. I did that. And you breathe in, you hold it, and bring it to the surface. And then you exhale longer than it took you to hold. So breathe in, hold it longer than it took you to breathe in, exhale longer than it took you to hold, and you will let that go. And you do that for 3 minutes, so however many breaths that is. And that will put you right into the parasympathetic mode, dopamine, endorphins, all of that energy will start, that positive energy will start flowing through your body, and you will feel absolutely incredible. And when that occurs, then you start thinking about the choices that you're making, and you're much more mindful, and you're able to process things differently, because we have what's called heart-brain coherence. Who in here ever has heard of that? Perfect. It's an absolutely beautiful and harmonic way that our heart center, which is our energetic part of us, that is the emotional and the intuitive side, and our brain, that's the physiological, like the program of our body, and they work together in the autonomic nervous system. So in those moments, our heart and our brain are working simpatico. They're doing great. And that's what we need to do a majority of the time in order to start to heal. So that heart-brain coherence is really important. Another 3D virus is the dominance of the left brain. And the reason for that is our primal, our reptilian brain, all of that, and how the technology works is through the left brain. We cannot be manipulated if we're in the right brain. If we are connected to our right hemisphere of our brain, that's where our intuition is. That's where our knowing is. That's where we follow our gut feeling, that fire in the belly of us knowing what's right and wrong, not being manipulated, not being programmed. And that's where children operate the most from. But we, from the moment we're born, we are taught to follow each other. You know, the loosh farms that we call school, we are indoctrinated every single day. We are told what to do. Memorize this, take a test, repeat this, repeat after me. All of these things, it's all training for us to be left brain dominant, because when we are in the left brain, we are logical, we are analytical, and we don't think with emotions at all. We're absent of emotions. We don't have empathy. We are just logical. And that's what a lot of children who are falsely labeled with Asperger's are doing. They are more dominant in the left brain, but for them it's different. They're here to teach us something important, so they're operating from the left brain for a reason, because everything is about balance. We need to have balance. The left brain and the right brain need to have coherence too. But the problem is not everybody's going to be exactly left brain or exactly right brain. We all have a tendency to be a little bit one or the other. I know for a fact that I am more right brain dominant, but I also have the ability to use my left brain. I can use logical thinking and analytical thinking. That's why I don't let people control me, because I'm like, no, I'm too smart for that. But I could also tap into my right brain and use my intuition. It's a balance, a delicate balance of both. And we're not taught that as children. We are taught to be in left brain, left brain, left brain all the time. Standardized testing, memorize this, program this, and we don't use it. How many children get to do art anymore? Maybe once a week. Do they go outside? My son doesn't go outside once all day unless he's walking from the bus. They're not grounding. They're not learning to tap into their intuition. They're not creating anything. The music these days in school, they don't create music. They just play music that's already been made, and they memorize the music, and they regurgitate the songs. They're not creating anything, so that's still left brain. They're not even benefiting from the music. So everything, I can't say everything, but a lot of our society is built upon left brain dominance. And why is that? Because when you're in the left brain, your mind is very active. That nemesis that I talked about is active. It's in control, and you are more easily programmed when you're in the left brain. It's just, there's scientific evidence of it now, and they're able to prove that. And that's when the technology works the most. The black box technology, the portals, the influence, the negative affirmations seep through our mind. And so we have to balance that out with the right brain. So the right brain tells us what's right and what's wrong. And that's where we need to start with our children and teach them how to do that. But I encourage everyone here, like I said, you can ground through the earth, but you can also ground through right brain activities. So I work with a lot of clients, and I'm like, what can you do that's creative, that we can activate your right brain? You don't have to sit and paint. You don't have to do arts and crafts, but there are things that will activate the right brain. And if you find what that is and you guys work on it, if you're lacking that, then you will have more balance, and your autonomic nervous system will kick into parasympathetic mode. You will be more balanced, and you will be less likely to be programmed and manipulated because you have that coherence going on, just like the brain and heart coherence. Okay, let's move into soul collectives. I want to talk about 3 soul collectives right now that are coming up the most, and I want to talk about that because maybe some of you guys might resonate with some of them. So the first one is called the sun rays. I learned about the sun rays within the last year. This is why I didn't put it in the last book. So the sun rays is a collective, a soul collective that are fractals of the sun's consciousness. So the sun is a portal. Everybody knows that. It's not new information. But what I learned about the portals in the sun is that there are fractals or energy that come off of these portals, and there are souls that come through, that come in and incarnate, that come in with the frequencies and light codes and DNA of the sun's consciousness to activate humanity in a very powerful way. So they are guardians of the sun. They're guardians of the sun portal. And everybody probably knows one of those people because they love the sun. They want to be in the sun all the time. They are not from this universe a majority of the time. They can be male or female, and many of them are adults. But there are children coming in. And they work a lot with earth elementals. So they love crystals. They love being outside. They want to be by the ocean a majority of the time. And they love the sun. All of us are absorbing sun and light codes all the time. But they actually, through their DNA, they vibrate the sun codes out. So even if you live in an area where there is no sun, you can still receive the sun light codes from those people. So sometimes they'll be born in areas like San Francisco or places that don't have a lot of sunlight. They have a close bond with animals. They anchor light codes into 3D to help break it down. They connect to water. A lot of them will choose careers like marine biology, things like that. And they're here to shift the DNA, to bring in more light, bring in the more light codes. So the solar eclipse, we've had many of them over the years. We were talking about it's a topic of conversation. What they were telling me is that when the sun is constantly, as it's a portal, it's constantly sending us light codes, and we're all recognizing that we're getting a lot more of these light codes, more and more, and we're absorbing them through our body. So we need to spend more time outside, take the sunglasses off, let the light codes come in. But when we have an eclipse like that, it's a very powerful moment, because when the sun is blocked by the moon, for that brief period of time, the sun charges up even more. It's like when we take a deep breath, and like that exercise of the progressive breathing that I just mentioned, you charge and you put all of that energy there, and then you hold it. The moon goes away, and then bam, we're all getting projected this beautiful energy, these light codes that are coming through, and that's the power of the eclipse, the solar eclipse. That we're not taught. Again, we're all taught to put our glasses on, and many of us are taught to fear that, because they say, oh, that's actually bad energy, when in reality, there's a lot of good energy. So the powers of the sun, just a quick few things. It helps increase dopamine and serotonin. It opens the pineal gland, stimulates melanin, which can also reduce cancer, skin cancer, stimulates the mitochondrial, our energy centers, promotes healthy immune system, reduces anxiety, improves sleep cycles, our circadian rhythm. So knowing all of that, it's no wonder that the dark players initiated sunblock, sunglasses, all of these things, so that we are fearful of the sun, and many people will not go out. I can't tell you how many people in the sun wear full armor. And I'm wondering why they're living in Florida. Like, if they're so afraid of the sun, like, why don't they just move? But they're like full. I mean, then they got umbrellas, and they got hats and face masks and complete covered. And they're not getting any of the benefits of the sun. But the good news is the sun rays are helping that by being around people like that, so that they can get the benefits of the light codes through them. So it's actually a really beautiful thing. Okay, the Halo group is another soul collective that I work with. I'm not a part of, but what I work with. And they're predominantly, I'll go in order. They're from Sirius A and Sirius B predominantly. Actually, I've only met, and all of the ones that I've met are from Sirius A and B, so I can't say that they're all from there, but I've only met those from there. They're all female, because they're bringing in the divine feminine energy to the planet. They are already ascended beings of light, and they have a white to golden band of light around. So they have the auric field, but then they have literally, it's a halo of light, a golden band that goes around them like a hula hoop. They work with the earth angels too. They're very similar to earth angels, and they come in primarily in the in like Asian cultures, Asian countries, Russia, and the Middle East. They chose to come into the most harshest areas of the world that are the most dominant, with male-dominant societies, and they come in to shift the DNA and start to change things from the inside. So many of the ones that I work with are Asian, a lot of Korean, a lot of Japanese, a lot of Russian, and a lot of Middle Eastern. Are predominantly the ones that I work with the most, but they're all female. But they are affecting the heavy dominance of male masculine energy in our collective in a very positive way, though. None of them resonate with their culture. That's a common theme. Like, they all have an adverse feeling about their culture, and they don't want to live in their country at all. They don't like the people. They don't want to live there. And they're like, why did I choose this? Because it conflicts with everything in their soul that's telling them what's right, and they're living in such hatred, and they don't want to be there. And they're there for ancestral healing and to shift the epigenetics so that things start to change. So that those cultures, now the next generations that come in, are more open and bring in more light, and they're not as closed off. They choose very difficult lives. They tend to have traumatic relationships. They tend to choose abusive partners, controlling men, and they really struggle. So if this is resonating with any of you, you could be part of the Halo group. Supernovas is the last one I want to talk about. The supernovas are my absolute favorite. Supernovas have been coming in for probably 100 years. And a majority of them are adults. And if anyone in this room feels like you are very different, like you've never fit in, nothing resonates with you, you've never had true friends, you don't agree with anything and how society operates, you really have struggled your whole life, and you're kind of a loner, you're very introverted, but you have a deep passion and love for humanity, even though you haven't found anybody that you resonate with. These are supernovas, and they're here to shift in a very passive way. So they shift the frequency. They tend to be hidden. They're not actually that outgoing. They're more reserved, and they are here to lay the foundation, because the supernovas that are coming in next are children that are not born yet, and I have been told that they will likely not be born until 2025, because we have to be anchored into 5D. And yes, we are majority in 5D, but we're still in 3D. I mean, you can see it. And they will not, they literally refuse. They refuse to come in until we are at a point where they know it's safe. They will not come into this. But I have met many parents that are going to bring them in. So they're not from this universe, and they choose to be born into ascension timelines. So they will only come into planets that are that collective has chose ascension. They're not going to come into a collective that hasn't decided yet. They will not do that. But they will. But that's why many of the adults are struggling, because they have really had a hard time their whole life, because they don't fit in anywhere, and they're really struggling. But the beautiful part about it is that they wouldn't be here if we hadn't chosen to ascend. And I think everyone in here agrees that we have, but some people still have that left brain mentality, and they want proof. And I know that this isn't proof, but it's very validating to know that they wouldn't come in if we weren't on the right track, and they keep coming in, and the children are coming in next. And those of you who know me and follow my work, I always say, because people always ask, like, what is your marker point? Like, how do you feel the ascension is going? What are the positive signs to you? And I always say, well, it's the children, because I know that they wouldn't keep incarnating here if we weren't on the right track. Why would they continue to come in? They would just be like, abort mission, and they would retreat, and they would not come, because many children volunteer to come that are already light beings, and they have to study for 100 human years before they can even come into a human body. That's why so many harshly misdiagnosed children with autism, Asperger's, all of these things, they are starseeds struggling to be human. They don't know how to walk, right? So they're trying to, they're going like this, trying to figure out how to use these feet. They don't want to look in people's eyes, because they see the demons around you. They see everything. So they're not going to look at you. They're not going to resonate with other children. They're going to be highly intelligent. They're not going to want to play with other children and like the stuff that we do, because they're like, well, this is like, I'm like way too evolved for this. What kind of toy is this? I don't want to play with this. I want to be with the adults. And they struggle so much, and they are trying so desperately to get our attention in the school system, because they're like, I'm not going to be indoctrinated. This is BS. I'm not going to speak your language, because you don't realize that everything you're saying has a spell connected to it, and you guys are asking for demons to come to you. Why are you guys doing that? And so they are desperate to find somebody like myself and parents that will understand them and that will listen to them and say, guys, wake up. What is wrong with you? And I've been having a lot of side conversations with people this week, and I'm like, they will not stop being thorns in our side and saying no and being a pain in the ass until we listen. They want us to listen to them and stop treating them like they're children, because they are not children. We do not own them. Yes, I have 3 that I birthed, and I'm very protective over them, and I like to say they're mine, but they're not. They're sovereign souls that came in to teach me something, and that's why I can honestly say that collectively, my children have taught me more than anything, any book, any teacher, anything I've ever done in my life, because I take the time to listen to them, and I value their opinion. Now imagine if everybody in the world did that and listened to all the children, how much we would learn. But we're so hard-headed, and we're so programmed to say that we are the adults here. You listen to me and only speak when you're spoken to, and we spank them, and we put them in timeout, and we put them on these medications to suppress the light that's coming through, and we're sabotaging them. Why are we doing that to ourselves? Because we don't know any better. We're not told this. And these soul groups are coming in to wake us up, and the supernovas are one of them. And they're coming in, and I'm excited about it, because I know that they would not volunteer to actually be born if we hadn't reached a point of no return. There are so many earth angels on this planet, I can't even tell you. I didn't even believe earth angels were a thing, but they are. There are a lot of people, and they tend to be men and women and they are 30s and up, and many elderly. So I can guarantee you that 25% of the people sitting in this room are likely earth angels. And you are guardian angels of people that are heavily connected, indoctrinated into the 3D, that you have been a guardian angel for that person, and it's likely somebody in your life right now that you chose to be their mother, to be their sister, to be their friend, to be their spouse, because you're like, let me help you. And many of them are mothers that choose to bring in starseed children because they're more patient, they're more kind, they're more loving, they get it. There are a lot of earth angels on the planet right now that want to be teachers, that love children, that love animals. They are the most kind, loving people you ever meet. They have such a gentle soul. You feel instantly connected with them. You feel really comfortable around them. And they are just bringing that love, like crystal children are bringing to our lives. Angels are doing that for us. They tend to be in the nursing field or healing field, and they work with children a lot because that's what their specialty is. And they are guardians of people incarnated as humans right now. There's so many of them. Okay, I want to give you guys a quick story. I don't know how much time I have, but ancestral healing is so important and is happening right now. And the way why do we incarnate as human? Because we can heal our ancestors with our bodies. Our bodies are actually being utilized as conduits of healing. So I had a woman come to me who had a hysterectomy. And the reason she had a hysterectomy is because she agreed in this lifetime she was going to bring in all the womb trauma of her ancestors from thousands of years that had been raped, genocide, had many, many children taken from them. And she agreed that in this lifetime she was going to let her womb be activated at some point in her life, and she was going to pull in, through cellular memory, through quantum entanglement and epigenetics, her cells activated in the womb, and she would bleed profusely every single month. And every time she would bleed, she would release trauma from the collective through her collective womb trauma. And eventually her body took on so much of this, she had to get that organ taken out. I talk a lot about this in my new book. Many people agreed to come into this life to utilize their body as a conduit of healing. And there's a lot of divine feminine womb trauma being cleared right now. And women are having heavy periods, endometriosis, all these issues, because we are, every single month, we are healing our ancestors and the womb trauma that they've endured, and we're allowing our body to be used as a conduit. Men, you're doing the same thing in different ways. Through different things. Everybody has their way of doing it, but all of us are doing some level of ancestral healing. Some of us just chose a little bit harder of a path because we had to have that nephrectomy, or we had to have something, or an organ removed from our body because our body just couldn't hold that energy anymore. So everybody in this room, 100% of you, I can guarantee that every single one of us is doing some level of ancestral healing using our body. So our body mimics the symptoms that our ancestors need to heal. Lung cancer, releasing generations, and not even just lung cancer. People who have chronic COPD or cough a lot, you're clearing out your ancestral's held in trauma that's stored in the heart chakra. So you're clearing it out, you're coughing. Thyroid, a lot of women have thyroid issues because we are speaking our truth that we haven't been able to do for many generations. So the thyroids are hyperactive or hypoactive. So a lot of us are using our bodies as conduits for ancestral healing. So we are healing our ancestral line and our soul lineage. The soul lineage has nothing to do with the demographic of, Italian. No, not that. It's anybody that you are connected with on a soul level that could be anywhere in the world. You're healing them, and then ancestrally you're healing the people connected to your lineage. Oh, perfect. Yeah, plenty of time. Okay, so staying neutral. This is like my biggest MO. Those of you that hear me talk a lot, I say this. Stop buying into all the psyops. The biggest part of 3D is division, and many people have touched upon that this week. This is how they keep us separated. This is how they continue to manipulate us by separating us. So I always say, stop taking sides. There is no such thing as Democrat, versus Republican. You guys know that, right? Like there's nothing that divides us unless we divide ourselves. And they will do that through gender. They have gender wars, male versus female. Now it's non-binary. Now they're working through the transhumanism movement, which I'll talk about. Sports teams, or your state is better than my state. Everything is designed in our reality for Enki and Enlil. That was my favorite one back then. I just sat back and it made me laugh so much because I'm like, this doesn't even make any sense. So there's a lot of division within our collective that is purposely placed there so that we will fight each other. And if we can just look at things through a different vantage point and stay neutral, that is our superpower. And I'm not just talking about collective, Trump versus Biden or any of that. It could be just your life in general. Try to look at your life through a neutral perspective. And you will see that you'll have more clarity on decisions you make because you're not thinking through it emotionally charged. And this is hard for everybody, and it's hard, including for myself, it's really hard to do. But if you bring yourself as an observer of your experience, you will start to see the many sides of the story, and your perception will shift, and you will make choices based on the fire in your belly, that knowing, and not from pride, not from anger, and not just because you just want to be right, which sometimes I do. But a lot of times, if we can just bring ourselves to a place of neutrality, the programming doesn't work because we are not thinking from a charged space of the left brain. Being neutral takes the right brain. It takes integrity, and it takes a lot of patience and tenacity to be able to do that. But that is how the collective stops fighting with each other, by staying in a neutral perspective. And it's really hard to do. But children are really good at that if you watch them. Years ago, we played a game at our house of what superpower you would want as a fun game over dinner. You want to fly. Do you want to be able to read people's minds? Like, want to breathe fire? Like, what superpower would you get? And everybody in the house went, and my son said, I want knowledge. And I was like, well, that's freaking brilliant. And I was thinking about it, and it made me think a lot, because if you think about the 3D in the box that we're in, knowledge or education is a privilege. Not everybody gets to learn, depending on where you live, and what we are taught in the indoctrination schools is predetermined by the curriculum, which is why I don't like the word curriculum, and I don't use curriculum in our schools. Because knowledge is our superpower. The more we know, the less we can be controlled. And so knowledge, that's why my son said that, because he said, well, if I know, the more I know, then, he didn't say this, but what I took from that is the more I know, the less I can be controlled. And so they want to restrict our information that we have access to. And that's why Journey to Truth and these conferences and Rebel of Disclosure is such an important aspect, because we can control what we are spreading around the collective. And we are, one step ahead of what they're trying to limit our abilities, which is why they have so many inverted truths. They have so many people that come into the truther community that does a 180, and we've all seen them where they're seemingly humble and they got all this beautiful information, and all of a sudden they just, like a switch goes off, and they're talking about something completely different, and it's inverted truths. And that's how the dark players try to control us, because they know the more we know, the less we can be controlled. So really, knowledge is our superpower, because that's how we break the interference. I talk about this in the book. I think it's human nature for us to have a sense of belonging. So there are naturally followers, but there are also there are leaders. And you have to have followers, because if everybody tries to lead, then it would be just utter chaos. It can't work. I mean, have you ever seen two alpha females try to work together? Like, it doesn't happen, right? It doesn't. I mean, imagine if everybody was an alpha. We can't have that. So naturally, in our DNA, we have those people that are able to follow, and then we have those that are able to lead. But in our society, in the 3D box, in the manipulation of the dark players, we have created the sheeple mentality, which is what they want. So the lions are the 1%, the dark players, the powers that were, and the sheeple is supposed to be the rest of us. So we are manipulated, we're indoctrinated, we follow what we're told because we're taught that since we're children and we're good little boys and girls and we listen to what we're supposed to do and we don't make trouble and we're not rebels and we do everything right and we're supposed to be rewarded and we're not. But I think what's happening in this awakening, this collective awakening, are more lions are waking up, but it's not in the sense of leaders because you can be a lion and you can have that fire within you, and you activate that fire within you and that drive and passion to awaken. And I believe that's where we are right now. We have more lions than ever before. Our lion or our lioness is coming out, and we are saying no to the box, and we are exercising our sovereignty because we never lost our sovereignty. We were just tricked into believing that we didn't have it anymore, like it was taken from us. Just like that junk DNA, we were tricked to believe that, oh, we need scientists to help us unlock it when we have the power to unlock it ourselves, but they don't want us to believe that. That's that knowledge. So more and more people are awakening their lion or their lioness, and that's why we have all of these people here today, and it's happening more and more every day. And if you guys look at the children that are being born today, how many of them are lions? Most of them are. That doesn't mean that they are aggressive and they're the leaders, but they think for themselves. They cannot be lied to. They'll call you out. They'll say, you're lying to me. And they know, and they're calling their teachers out. And they're saying, you're wrong. That's not right. Because the lion is activating within our humanity. I just want to put this in here because it's really important. I feel like I work with a lot of men specifically, and I don't mean to call the men out, that are not spiritual, but they are very smart and they want to heal. And they say, I'm not spiritual, so I can't be a starseed. And that's not true. Some people volunteer to be the left-brainers, to be with the men that are very masculine and have been brought up in heavy religion or heavy philosophies, and they're not open to, I can't tell you how many times my husband looks at me like I have 3 heads when I'm talking to him about some of my spiritual stuff, because there's a disconnect sometimes because I think I'm over the top. And we don't need over the top people. We need a lot of people that other people can resonate with so that they can go out and they can affect them in a positive way, but they're speaking their language. They're bringing something else to them that works with their headspace, that it resonates with them. And it doesn't have to be spirituality. They could connect on science. They can connect on extraterrestrials. They could connect on anything. But just because somebody is not a spiritual being that doesn't want to talk about chakras, that doesn't sit in the lotus position outside and is grounding and hugging trees, that does not mean that they are not starseeds. Starseeds is just a term to mean that we are all sovereign light beings, that we are here to kick some ass, and we all have our ways of doing it and our ways to help each other. And I want to make that clear because I feel like men are pushed aside and they're too masculine and they are told that they're not starseeds. And that's just not true. I have my son, I keep bringing him up, but I was doing a crystal class at his homeschool, and he's like, Mom, in front of everybody, he's like, Mom, I don't believe in any of this. Can I go to the other room? Because he wanted to go learn something. He wanted to do math. And I was, and I'm like, that's okay. You don't have to do this. And it's okay if you don't believe in this, in crystals, and the powers of crystals, because he's not here to do that. Like, he doesn't resonate with that. But you know what he does resonate with? He wants to go talk with the other kids that are brainiacs and maybe help them think of something in a different way because knowledge is his thing, right? That's his thing. So you don't have to be spiritual to be a starseed. That is really important. And I think that it's something that we really need to talk about, and we need to have that conversation because you don't have to love crystals to be an ascended being. Quickly, Agenda 2030. I think that the reason why we are escalating this ascension and why there's such a push from the dark players to corrupt our minds, to make us fat, to make us hate each other, to make us believe all of these things, all these psyops, to keep us plugged into the matrix so we don't look somewhere else, because I believe that 2030 is a trajectory. I believe that 2030 is the age, a pivotal point in the age of Aquarius, where the frequency has an opening. There's an opening within a frequency of consciousness where more and more children are souls are ready to come through and incarnate as children. And that is why 2030 is such an important period of time. And they're trying to corrupt our souls. They're trying to use the woke agenda. They're trying to steal the innocence of our children through hypersexuality, through gender confusion. And they're pushing and they're making it so beautiful in these pretty packages with celebrities and musicians of selling your soul. And look at this technology and look how cool it is. And all so that they can control us and make us into these hybrid Autobots, society of non-thinking, hive mind, suppressed people that hate each other, and so that we can just live in these realities where we sit on our couch and we put the VR on and we completely disconnect. And they're doing that so much so that they could get to us and corrupt our souls before 2030. And that's why 2030 is so significant. That's why they're escalating. Have you guys noticed how blatant the agendas are now and how fast they're pushing it? They're racing us to 2030 so they could corrupt us all so that we don't get there. Oh my gosh, I don't have time to talk about. Okay, domestic animals is really important to talk about animals, and I didn't have time to put this in my speech today, but so many people said, Sherry, we got to talk about this. I could do I could do a 30-hour presentation on animals. I've been working with animals my whole life, and they're very near and dear to me. And I'm just going to say, I'm going to keep it brief. But animals are not lower vibrational beings. They come into and I'm talking all animals, but I want to talk right now about domestic animals. Why do we have dogs? Why do we have cats? Why do we have domestic pets? They are our lifelines. They come into our life. We know them. They are in our soul family, some of which sometimes they are fractals of ourselves that come in. Some of them are angelic beings, and they are here to help us. They are here to be by our side. They are here to guide us in a way that we can feel unconditional love through touch. Because we have angels near us, but not everyone can feel them or see them, and you certainly can't hug and snuggle with your angel. I mean, maybe you could. So animals are souls that volunteer to come in as a dog or a cat. They'll say, I'll volunteer to do that. I'm going to show you unconditional love, but I'm also going to teach you something important. I'm going to project and mirror the things in you that need to heal. So if you're an aggressive person, your dog's going to be aggressive. If you're sad, your dog's going to be sad. If you're anxious around people, your dog's going to be anxious around people. They're here to mirror of what we need to work on within ourselves. And the most important thing I want to talk about today, because I'm really trying to get through this quickly, is they will take our illnesses. So if we're about to get cancer, we can have a dog come into our life, and they will get that cancer that we were going to get, so they save our lives. So we have to stop feeling guilty, because I work with a lot of people doing animal communication sessions. Their dog died recently, and they're so riddled with guilt, and they said, what did I do wrong? Or I couldn't afford to do this. And I say, your dog just selflessly chose to take your cancer. You were going to die, and they saved your life. That you have to release the guilt, because that's the whole reason they came into your life, is to do that for you. So they're here to be. That's an extreme case, but they're here to be our companions. They're here to guide us. They're here to be our emotional support, and they're here to remind us what unconditional love feels like. Because in this reality, we forget, because we don't feel it that often. So they are by our side all the time. They sacrifice a lot so that they could be with us, and that's why they have shorter lives. Dogs are more earthbound, and so they come in to be with us. They're our companions. They are more earthbound, and they are protectors of the physical realm. Cats are multidimensional, and they are here to usher us and help us in the astral realm. So they do two completely different things, but they're both really important. And both of them, no matter the breed, when you go to work and you're worried about whether or not they're okay, they're astrally traveling, and they're with you the whole time. They're always with us. So people tell me, how can I get over this guilt? I say, they want you to do better. They want you to heal. So don't let their death be in vain, because you know what they're going to do? They're going to come back in again, and you can potentially lose another animal the same way until you learn that lesson. So they will just keep coming back and keep coming back. So instead of feeling guilt or shame, thank them for what they did for you and use that as motivation to heal yourself, because that's where we are in the collective right now. What's your role? What is your role? Everybody sitting here is here for a reason. What's your role? What are you doing to contribute to the collective? How are you working on yourself? And I have written 4 books now. I have spoken on many stages. I have talked to many clients, thousands of people over the years, and I've come to the exact same conclusion every single time about what this ascension is about. And it's really about us doing the work and going within and healing ourselves. Because when we heal ourselves, we shift the vibration of the planet, we break down the box, and the 3D influence and the 3D interference no longer works. They can't corrupt us if we do not give consent. And that is what this ascension is about. So it's about recognizing how to heal and what's your role. What is everybody doing here to be a positive influence on humanity? How are you contributing to the shift? You don't have to be on a stage to do it. You don't have to write a book. You don't have to have a podcast. But everybody is influencing somebody in a positive way. You have to identify what it is that you are doing to help. What is your role here? You don't have to do anything big, because a lot of us are working in a very passive way. Grid work, holding the space, affecting people's lives in our community, but that has a ripple effect. So I encourage everybody here today, whether you're doing a podcast, writing a book, dreaming of opening up a sanctuary, working with animals, helping the elderly, whatever it may be, think about what your role is and how you're positively contributing to the co-creation and the manifestation of the new earth, as opposed to plugging in to all the things that we want to change without inserting your ideas of what the change looks like. Focusing on what the change actually is and how can we get there. That is where I believe all of us should be focusing our attention on right now, and what is our role? How are we making a difference? What is your contribution? That's all we should be. We shouldn't be looking at each other and what the person next to us is doing. It's about what we are doing. What are you doing to positively affect the collective right now? These are my books. Children's books. Most of you know Aramis Creative Learning Center. I highly recommend you check it out. We're working on getting our first center open in Florida, and we'll have many more to come. I know many of you in here are so supportive, and I thank you so much for that. We need donors, we need investors. So come see me if you want to be part of the change. My new book, Courage to Change the Freedom Movement, comes out next month. Talks about everything I just mentioned today and so much more. I teach you how to heal yourself. These are the things that worked for me. These are the things that work for my clients. These are the ways you're being manipulated, and this is how we can get through this together. So the last thing I want to do real quick, I want to premiere something that where's Tyler? Tyler helped me put this together. And I want to thank everybody here that contributed to this, because I asked people to let's put a positive energy out into the collective and show how everybody is working together in the community that we've put together and we're building and we continue to build, to motivate us to have the courage to change so we can create this freedom movement, which I believe that is exponentially speeding up. So I created this video, not really as a promo for my book, but it was really for all of you today, because I've been waiting for 6 weeks to premiere it, and Tyler helped me put it together. And I want to thank you, Tyler, because he's incredible for all the work that he does with these videos. How do I play it? Just press it again.
What does freedom mean to you?
Freedom means to me is being able to learn what you want to learn, or being able to choose what you want to do in your life.
World, I want to leave you better. I want my life to matter. I am afraid I have no purpose here. I watch the news on TV, abandon myself daily. I am afraid to let you see the real me. it falls, rain it falls. Pouring on me, the rain it falls, rain it falls. Soaring the seeds of love and hope, love and love. We don't have to stay stuck in the weeds.
What does freedom mean to you?
To give love.
Thank you.
World, you're not alone in all this. You're not alone, I promise. And then together we can do anything. I want to leave you better. I want my life to matter. I am afraid I have no purpose here. Rain it falls, rain it falls. Pouring on me, the rain it falls, rain it falls. Sowing the seeds of love and hope, love and love. We don't have to stay stuck in the weeds. The courage to change our mind, the courage to change our mind, the courage to change today. The courage to change our mind, the courage to change our mind, the courage to change today. You're not alone in all this. You're not alone, I promise. Standing together we can do anything. You're not alone in all this. You're not alone, I promise. Standing together we can do anything.
What does freedom mean to you?
To me, freedom means to follow your dreams, follow your heart's desire, without anyone telling you you cannot do it.
Freedom means I can believe in whatever religion I want.
That's good though. Yes.
The courage to change our mind, the courage to change our mind, the courage to change today. The courage to change our mind, the courage to change our mind, the courage to change today. You're not alone in all this. You're not alone, I promise. Standing together we can do anything. You're not alone in all this. You're not alone, I promise. Standing together we can do anything. You're not alone in all this. You're not alone, I promise. Standing together we can do anything. You're not alone in all this. You're not alone, I promise. Standing together we can do anything.
That's Bigfoot. Thank you, guys.